a little sparse today.
Yeah.
It's quite all right. Where's my boy Bono? No,
Just this one.
did he? He already left. All right, they had a good weekend too, I think so. No, obviously that was like we talked about, really, really good for the soul. Something was obviously, as everybody knows, really, really needed. But I just mean that in a way that, as we keep talking about pounding the rock and climbing a mountain, sometimes, seeing is believing, and just having that joy and that excitement is what the game is all about. But to be honest with you, I think more than anything, it's the competitive spirit. And that's a little bit of the issue. Like, right, we haven't been in some of those positions where at least make it a competitive spirit where this is going to come down to the finale. And that's what was awesome. That was awesome to see. It was awesome to be a part of. And then everything else that follows with it, right? Of an incredible crowd, an incredible environment, including the weather. Just one of those things that, what makes it so special. And, but then again, you got about 14, 15 hours to enjoy it. And then you got to be able to move forward. And the challenges are still right in front of us. And they get bigger and bigger as we continue to go. So, this is one of those ones where, hey, you get to go on the road and play the number 2 team in the country, 9-0. It's not a whole lot of time to waste, and there's not a whole lot of time to, sit back and enjoy the Saturday night to be able to move on. And obviously, we still got a lot of answers. We still got a lot of things we have to answer. We are late in the season, which always you get to those situations where you have injuries and things like that, and a lot of things that we don't know as we sit here on a Monday. But we got to continue to push forward and get ourselves prepared.
You mentioned the challenge in front of you. You faced a good offensive this season. He has the number 1 smart offense in the country.
I didn't know that.
As you meet with the defense this week, what are the key talking points or the things you feel like you guys have to do well?
Oh, we got to continue to build off of the things that we've done. It's a week in, week out, opportunity for us. And there are some things that, I think we've done a really good job of defensively. I think we've, been more disciplined in what we've done. I think we've been sounder in what we've done. We've done a good job at eliminating the big plays. I think, those kinds of things are going to have to stay intact. We're going to have to do a really, really good job at tackling well in space. And I think that obviously as explosive as they are, I think one of the best things they do is in open space and even in the box stuff, that they break tackles and they create larger plays just because of it. And, so for us defensively, a lot of those things, the fundamentals of things are going to have to apply. But I think one of those big ones is going to be, we have to tackle really well.
Mark?
Given the way Indiana's turned around their program, 2 years ago you faced them in a completely different situation, and we know what they've done since then. As someone who's trying to kind of build things here, how quickly they've done it, does that hope? I don't know.
Well, it does for everybody, right? I mean, look, I've played in the AAC for how many years, and at the University of Cincinnati, and as soon as you do something that maybe somebody hasn't done or wants to do, then you become that. Hey, see, everybody can do it. That's the beauty of what it is that we do, right? I mean, before us at Cincinnati it was UCF, and then it was us at Cincinnati who made a run and got in the playoffs, and there's others, but that's what Indiana's done the last 2 years, and there's a combination of those things. Everybody'd like to know what it is. I don't even know if you asked Coach from within, like he pinpoint exactly what it is, but there's a lot of things that have obviously that have gone into it. Great coaching is one of them. Great quarterback play is definitely another. But I think it gives everybody. That's what I think college football. I'm not sure I want to dive into this part of it, but that's where you think about where college football is in 4 years from now. Just schematically, rule-wise, world-wise, and then you say, well, maybe it doesn't need a change. Look what can still happen. And so, whatever it is, they've done a really, really good job, obviously, in the last 2 years.
Luke, I don't want you to get accused of doing Baltimore material. You said 9-0, they're 10-0.
10. I guess when I looked at the game on the TV, it said 9.
Yeah.
So I apologize. Yes, thank you.
Jeff Grimes had to adjust the offense for just the amount of injuries and different things that have happened this year. Can you talk about the job that he's done in terms of just finding ways to do things?
Well, I think I said it last week or 2 weeks ago, or even during the bye week. It's it's tough in the midst of things. It's always tough to evaluate exactly where you are. Now, by weeks we evaluate things, but it's hard to put, some numbers and quantification to it. And it's been that way offensively in particular, to be on at least your fourth quarterback and maybe even the fifth and how it's kind of rolled through. The other things that have happened to us, even offensive line wise, and, where we've had to adjust and adapt. So it's hard to take a really big picture at looking at what this offense you expected to look like and where it is. But nonetheless, if you're in here, if you're around it every single day, there's a consistency to what Coach Grimes brings to what we're doing. There's a level of confidence, even though things don't always look that way, sometimes on Saturdays. And I think that's where our guys continue to feed off. I think that's where our guys have continued to, find ways, whether it's very incrementally, at getting better. It comes from leadership, and I think he's done a great job of that.
Yeah, Coach, when you guys went back and watched that film, what stood out about Matt Young's performance, and where have you seen him kind of grow and get a little bit more comfortable in that increased role?
Matt's a guy that, when he came in here, you had no idea, right? I mean, I could say there's a guy coming in, obviously as a transfer. And the truth of the matter is, Matt was thrown into a position that maybe, I'm not saying he wasn't ready for, but like to be your first ever, Division I, so to speak, college experiences at Alabama, playing against the receivers that, that they had in the environment in which they had. And I think he's been thrust into some of these, maybe some action before. I'm not saying he didn't want it. Obviously, as a competitor, that's what you want. But even that maybe we thought would be something we were ready for too. But what you have seen is a consistent growth. What you have seen is a building of his confidence in the things he's doing, more comfortable, not just with what we're doing, but what obviously we're getting on a week in and week out basis. And Matt is a really good football player that I think is just scratching the surface, even though he's a younger guy, just scratching the surface at all the different things that he can do. And I'm excited about where he is and what he's done and what he's had to go through, to be honest with you, because that's what's going to make him who he is, and that's going to make him the player that he is.
Obviously, we've talked a lot about Mason this year, but his numbers in the last 2 games have been outstanding. Kind of what, from your perspective, now you've been able to watch the film from these last two, has stood out the most to you about him?
I think that there's a natural confidence level. I think when we talk about guys that work hard and guys that are like just the ultimate competitors, I think there's a difference. I really do. I mean, there's guys that work hard, then there's guys when the ball goes down that just have, this competitive nature to them that, continue to rise to what they do. And I think that's just where he is. I couldn't say I completely knew that. You like to think maybe you have some idea of that. I'm kind of biased towards those guys that have wrestled, and whether they're really successful wrestlers or just in general, I think sometimes I hope and believe that there's a competitive spirit that maybe something different than you can even notice, whether it's recruiting or even playing in high school. And I think that's where where he is. He's just a guy that has a lot of confidence in what it is that he does. But I think when it goes down, the ball goes down. What we didn't know, because in the first maybe 6-7 games, I don't know how much he played. And how many opportunities he had to, maybe even show all that he could do. But since given that opportunity, I think we've seen a lot of things kind of show for what maybe we would hope. I think it starts with the confidence level. And I think it's just a competitive spirit that, obviously what we've seen, the moment has not been too big.
Thomas Heiberger probably played his most, Saturday. I guess I'm wondering, I assume is he one of those young guys you talked about kind of trying to figure out what you got? Is that kind of one of the missions there? And what did he kind of show you, at least in practice, that gave you the confidence that, to put them out there?
So I'm glad you brought it up, because I think Tommy's one of those guys that, with just what has happened with, Mason Posa and Cooper Catalano, that, maybe some people, he gets overshadowed a little bit. Maybe some of those guys' opportunities came at a different time than it could have been Tommy Heiberger. But to be honest with you, I think maybe about 2 weeks ago was when I started to notice that Tommy looked, kind of truly healthy. Tommy's had the knee and the MPFL and the surgery, and came back a hell of a lot earlier than I think anybody ever expected, to be released, to be full go. But I still think that he, had some, some, I don't say residual, but some, getting comfortable and, coming off of a major surgery. And it was probably about 3 weeks ago where I started to notice a different speed to Tommy, a different sign of that athleticism that we saw when he first got here, and finally got some opportunities to be put in a position where, you know, he could go out there like the other young guys have done and see what he can do. And so it really kind of started a little bit on special teams the last few weeks. I had, you know, noticed some different things and just the way he moved and the way he responded in the midst of the games that he was in. And just thought it was an opportunity for him based on, you know, getting him on the field, playing in some you know, bigger kind of nickel positions. And I think what we did get a chance to see is Tommy's a lot like those other two guys. There's the moment is not too big. You know, it's hard to judge guys, and you got to be careful putting guys into, you know, I'd say boxes, but when they're injured and they're hurt. And I think what we have seen from Tommy is like there's a really bright future for him, just like those other two linebackers.
A couple weeks ago, when you moved Carter up from the scout team, we're looking at more packages, and then he had to play a lot, obviously, Saturday. What did you learn about how he prepared, how he kind of attacked what was on his plate? I don't. It'll be a better question maybe for Kenny. Obviously, I'm in the quarterback room a lot, you know, but I think that it's still he's been in a position where, you know, he's been asked some questions, been asked to do some things, but it's hard to really say. Like, is there a different level of, you know, excitement from him? Is there a different level? Is there a different bounce? Is there a different look on his face over the last 3 weeks? And I would say yes. Does that translate to all the other things? Yeah, I believe so. But, you know, you until they put in that moment, you don't always know. And so I thought he went out there, in particular Saturday, and did exactly what we asked him to do. You know, we had a plan if that was the case and what the situation was going to be, and we wanted to put him in a position where, you know, he can do the things that he can do and be successful. And, you know, I thought he really handled that really, really well. Based on where the game was and how the game was, I mean, one of the number one things that I said and wanted from him was being able to take care of football. And we can all critique and pick different things that he did or didn't do really well, but the one thing he did really well was take care of football.
Luke, going off of the question about Mason Reiger, just that outside linebacker, the edge group as a whole, have you seen?
Did somebody ask about Mason?
I asked about Posa.
Oh, yes,
Oh.
yes. Okay.
Oh, it's okay.
My apologies.
It's another good one to talk about.
Yeah, well, yeah, Mason Reiger, you have other guys, you know, obviously Sebastian, others off the edge. What, have you seen the growth that you wanted to see so far from the outside linebacker group after all the offseason additions and whatnot?
That's another unique spot. Just, I mean, the depth there right now for us has been really good, and which probably keeps us from talking about some of the other guys. You know, we talked about Posas and we talked about some of these guys, and Nick Clayton's another guy that's in that mix that just based on how those guys have played and the, you know, the experience from those guys, a guy like Nick Clayton has not gotten the opportunities that Mason and Cooper have gotten. I know you asked about those guys. I'm bringing up another young guy because he was on the kickoff team this week, and we have a kind of thing on ours, a race to the far 40 to see who's the fastest to the far 40. And it's not always the guy that, you know, from Coach Collins has the fastest 40-yard dashes, but the guys that run the fastest when they know contact is inevitable. And I think he won every single race to the far 40. So there's some more depth even at that position. It's just with the way those guys are playing, Mason and Sebastian and even Tyrese a little bit, like it's hard to get some of those guys on the field. And but for those guys, they've done a great job. I mean, this past week, Mason Reiger, I think, played 65 snaps, which is not something that we wanted to do and didn't want to put him in that position. But based on where the game was and what we had to have him do, with DP being in the first half, he played a lot more into the boundary and played Jack. And then the second half, he played a little bit more at the Sam position. So those guys' versatility has given us an opportunity to, I think, to be what we are and be consistent in discipline on the defensive side of the ball.
Luke, to follow up on the question about Carter, based on what you saw this week, did you see enough to believe he'll be the quarterback here at least this week, given the injuries to Danny and Billy? And if so, how do you develop a plan to generate some more downfield throws?
No, I think you got to give them opportunities. I mean, there's still some things we got to figure out as we get into this week and what gives us the best chance to continue to move forward. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that Carter was the backup last week, but I think in a lot of the things that we were doing, you know, we had repped both those guys as the backup. And just where we were in the game and the situation and what we thought we needed, Carter was the guy that went. Now, as we move forward, we're going to have to figure out what that best gives us. But either way, we know we got to be able to throw the ball down the field. We know we've got to be able to do the things that whether Carter or Hunter can do, but the things that we need to do to make sure that we're not just completely one-dimensional. So we got a lot of work to do. I'd say there's a whole lot of time. These weeks, they don't slow down. It's not like you can throw another bye in there of any sorts. But we got some work to do with that.
Do you have an update on Danny yet? Just where he's at?
I don't know if anything's been released. So I'm not positive. I probably would just hold until I get the exact word from the trainer.
Cool, so my question.
There's other injuries you could ask about, I'm sure, but
John's got one. You want to pass it to what do you think?
Oh, yeah.
go ahead.
You were mentioning your wrestling counterpart earlier. He gave a very passionate, kind of defensive view and said that you're misunderstood.
Who's that?
Crystal.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. So,
I didn't hear that one, so I don't know.
what does it mean to kind of have that support from within the building and feel like you're misunderstood?
I don't know which different things I'm misunderstood with. I'm sure I'm misunderstood at home in my own home, so that can always be something that depends on how people read different things. But I think more than anything, support is support, and by nature, us wrestlers in some ways stick together no matter what. But I think there's a lot of support around here. I think everybody, there is a coach that has been through some of these things, understand, like, regardless of what the landscape is. I mean, everybody wants to win. There's an expectation no matter what around here, and the truth of the matter is that, you wouldn't want it any other way, right? If nobody was complaining or upset, then you probably would never have a good atmosphere inside that stadium, and you would never be able to sell it out. And so I think you gotta understand what it is that you came here for and what it is that you want. But with that all being said, like, sometimes in these times, like, there's nothing greater than support, whether it was obviously this past week, the support, publicly we got from, Chris and Chancellor Mnuchin, all those things, they go a long, long way in all that we're doing.
Yeah, we had a block punt, last week, and I think there's been at least maybe 1-2 other times, got team gotten through. And at least
I've had 2 block punts this year.
Yeah, gotten to the department. So,
And they blocked 5 or 6 Indiana has this week. So it's in case you were going towards that, it's going to be a big deal.
yeah, so I guess I know if there was a common thread issue there.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the punt coach.
Yeah.
That's me. So
Um,
that makes it a little bit difficult right now. Obviously, yes, you got to be a hell of a lot better. And we have been good, but not great on the special teams. Saturday, like you said, we've always told our guys 88% of the time, if you block a punt, you win a game. So we helped be the 12% so that didn't have that happen, and hoping, believing that maybe the fake punt kind of helps even some of those things out. But the whole special teams across the board, we've got to be great, especially in this league, especially on the road in special teams. That's a foundation of ours.
and a quick follow-up. I know that it requires some quick thinking for Sean, but in a situation like that, when you're so close to the goal line, what do you do?
Yeah, no, to be honest with you, Sean has been phenomenal, even when he was our scout team punter, at getting the ball off at whatever time he needed to get it off at. And the bigger issue was where it came from, I think. Against Ohio State, we turned one loose right there before half, and Sean got the thing off in like 1.65, but it was coming right in his face. And this one came from the edge, and I don't know that he could sense and feel that clock that we needed him to make up for maybe a mistake that we had made. So I think that it goes hand in hand. There's all those things to it. But if there's one thing that Sean, even last year as the scout punter and even the beginning of the year this year, we couldn't block a kick of his because he had a really good internal clock based on where things were coming from. But with that all being said, like, our job is to not have put him in that situation, and we got to do a better job of it.
Just after that block punt, a play like that had the potential to really derail this team and inspire out of control, maybe 4 or 5 other times
Yep.
in one single game. I'm just curious if you saw anything different from
your team's demeanor, but after that, you guys were able to kind of really shut the water off for Washington?
Yeah, you preach and preach and preach about things, and one of the big things this week was don't flinch, and that could mean a whole lot of things, right? I mean, didn't know what kind of weather we'd get, didn't know exactly what it would be. There's going to be plays here and there. I was really kind of inferring to, hey, this quarterback is unique in a way that he can make some huge plays, and sometimes you think you got him, and all of a sudden he takes off and he goes for 50, and some of those things where don't flinch. If somebody goes down and somebody else has got to go in, which on the 8th play of the game we had that too. So if there's anything I can say that you're proud of, okay, there's a lot of things, but I think more than anything it was our guys' ability, in particular this past week, to not flinch. And we needed it on Saturday, whether it was an incredible, the block punt, Danny when he goes down in the 8th play of the game. I mean, there's a lot of things that, I'm not saying anybody would, but a lot of people would flinch at and let some negative thoughts really go to their head. And they did a phenomenal job at not allowing that to happen. Defense went in there, stopped him on the first play, and the guy makes a great play on play 2. I mean, he doesn't make that play. It's 3rd down. I love where our guys were and giving us an opportunity to maybe flip that whole thing around.
On the brighter note of the special teams, Tyrell Henry and his punt returns. Well, and I know weather obviously can affect puntings as well, but just what did you see
So-
Tyrell being back?
Special teams player of the week was Sean. It was a battle between whether I thought it was Sean or we thought it was Tyrell Henry. And to be honest with you, just the way Tyrell coming back handled the punts, in the weather, in the situation, taking control back there. There's a lot of things that people don't recognize. It's like the long snapper. Nobody recognizes him until all of a sudden bad happens. And sometimes a punt return, you don't recognize the things and you don't see the hidden yardage that's in there. Like, whether he got a return for 7 yards, he got one for 12, and he got one for, I don't even know what, 10. I mean, like in a game like that, that's incredible yardage. And I thought he did a phenomenal job at handling it. And even a couple of the bad punts, we've been in some positions where at the back end of that thing, we didn't handle. We got lucky with a bounce, but he was right there to be able to do everything we needed him to do, and we're going to need that down the stretch.
Indiana's got a couple of linebackers who were training All-American from last season, and the guys playing just as well. Just what do they do to free those guys up and make sure that they're opponents aren't able to time that second level?
I tell you, it's like I mean, a team that has confidence. You see these guys and they play with incredible confidence. To be honest with you, I'm not saying there's one thing in particular like, oh, this guy runs 4.5, or this guy, he sheds blocks, or this guy. I mean, they're very good football players. You can see the confidence in which they play with. They don't panic. They're never out of position. For me, evaluating linebackers that always look like they're in a great football position. You can read their number at all times. I don't ever really see them cross over inside the box. I mean, yes, they got some guys up front. I think they do a good job at, whether it's movement a little bit and being guys that can penetrate to at least keep them, those guys able to flow a little bit freer. But I think the combination of all those things, there's an incredible confidence in what it is that they're doing, and it shows.
Maybe this is a little bit of a premature question, but with the way at quarterback injuries, you're down to 3 healthy quarterbacks. Is there an emergency plan if, God forbid, you get to that point?
There's always a plan. I'm not exactly sure just yet. It's only Monday at what that plan is. We still got to figure out exactly who's 1 and 2 before we start to think about who's the 4th going into a game like this. So there's a lot of things. It's not, I mean, obviously the quarterback position everyone's talking about, but there's other positions that have some similar, things that you got to think about. And, so sometimes that position's a little bit, you can snap it to anybody, right? I mean, they've got some tailbacks back there, but we're hoping we don't have to get to that. But, there'll definitely be a plan. Let's just, let's hope that we don't have to get down to that type of plan.
Anybody else?
Thanks.
Thanks.